I still might shake my finger at you if you don't do enough. But so first thing, let's get back to that old thumbs up, thumbs down. Can someone let me share my screen? Oh, there we go. And I'm going to share. Can thumbs up if you can see the REPL that is currently loading. And how do I see the chat while I'm, yes. Okay, so I'm getting a couple thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. All right, cool. So some of y'all may know, I recently enrolled in a boot camp called Hack Reactor. Been having a great time, an amazing time actually, for the past month. So if feel free, if you want to talk about boot camps or you just want to talk about my experience in general, feel free to message me after this. This is actually one of our early assignments that we were given. So full credit goes to Hack Reactor for the problem statement, for the kind of setup, but I'm going to show off a little bit of my solution to this problem. So first, a little bit about unit tests. So give this a shot. See if someone can define what is a unit test and why do we do it. Yeah, just throw that in chat. Okay. All right, I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, tiny pieces of code, test a particular class or functionality. All right, I'm seeing a couple themes here. So a unit test is essentially a function that you write that tests whether another piece of your code produces the expected output. So your test is going to be here, and it's going to, when it runs, it's going to call your function and give it a certain set of inputs, and then it's going to check to see if the output is what is expected. And of course, just like your teacher told you over and over again, always proofread what you write, because you always want to make sure you submit a correct assignment. As developers, we should always be double and triple checking to make sure that our code produces the output that we're expecting. So let's write a couple unit tests here. Right here, I have a function. It's called detect network, and it does something very simple. It's about given a credit card number, this function should return a string with the name of a credit card network, like Visa or American Express. Here's our example. Detect network takes in, just this long number as a string and spits back out a string, which is the name of the network. And right now, the only thing that works in this function is American Express. So how do we recognize an American Express card? The first two digits, the prefix, are going to be either 34 or 37, and the length is going to be 15. Pretty simple, right? Does my function work? So down here, I've written a little console log statement, and it basically is going to console log the result of this equality, which is my function called with a number and the output I expect, right? So this is like just a really simple unit test. And when I run it, I get true. All right. So yeah, great. So right now my function works. If I put in a prefix of 34 and a length of 15, it works. Throw into the chat, what are some other things that we should be testing about this function? Especially, and if you need to, go back and ignore the requirements about discover here for a second. But if you need to, go back and just look at the requirements. Prefix 37. Okay, so a test, right? You probably want to test something that shows that it fails, right? If there's alpha characters, nice thinking, JC. Or JC, I might say also, you probably want to test to see if it can handle something other than the input that it's supposed to take. So if you give it something other than a string, what does it do, right? So let me start with that prefix of 37. And I know that, yeah, unfortunately, mine isn't really set up to handle newts. Corey, if we want to talk about, we'll talk later maybe about how we, I'd really like to know how to write a function that can handle a newt for sure. But right now, I'm going to just copy and paste. We're going to change our input to prefix of 37, length of 15. It should give us American Express. I'm going to go ahead and also set up a test where you notice that one of the criteria is if our number is not an American Express card, we should return no network, right? So we definitely need to test that. Let's do that. Let me come up with a number here. And I'm actually going to test this 2 different ways. I'm going to test this number I'm going to put in has a prefix of 34, but the length will fail. Or I'm going to put in a number that the prefix is correct. It's, no, the length is correct, 15, but let's say the prefix is 30. And I need to switch these. The second one should be no network. And this one should be no network. That's my expected output. All right, let's run. Question from Stefan: should line 14 be? Stefan, don't give away the next line of my talk here. It's fine. It's fine. All right. Oh shoot. All right. So some of our tests failed. We were looking for all trues. We got 1 true and 3 falses. So let's take a quick look. Looks like the prefix of 37 test failed. Stefan actually figured out why. Yep. All right. I need to change this to be 37. Let's run it again. Boom. Test is true. Great. We found and fixed our first bug before it made it into production. But can anyone guess why would, based on the logic that you see here, why would these last two tests be producing false when really we want them to be producing true? What is going on? Doesn't meet the condition. Right, yep. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of suggestions. Yeah, if you thought to yourself, hey, there's actually nowhere that returns no network in this function, you're absolutely right. So let me add that really quickly. I do need, after we check all other conditions, I need to just enter a quick return statement, no network. All right, let's see if that fixes a problem. Boom. All 4 things fixed, right? Great. So, we just dodged a bullet. There were actually 2 different serious bugs in our function that we caught now by running just really simple console log statements and running them before we, probably even before we committed this code to GitHub or committed it to a repo somewhere. Great. But you might be thinking there's a problem with this. This is actually a really simple function. It's only handling 2 prefixes and 1 length. What if we threw an extra requirement in here that it also handles discover, the discover cards. Now discover can take a prefix of 6011. It can also take all the prefixes from 644 to 649, and it can take the prefix of 65, and it has 2 different lengths, 16 and 19. So that's 1 prefix here. I think that's 5 here and 1 more here, and then 2 different lengths. Can anyone do a back of the napkin calculation, like how many different combinations of prefix and length does discover actually need to handle? Does this function need to handle in order to handle discover? How many? So looking at one prefix, 5 prefixes. So that's probably 5, 6, 7 prefixes in all, and then 2 different lengths. True. Just based on the pure requirements, like also thinking about if we're going to do thorough unit testing, we want to make sure we test each combination of prefix and length. So you're thinking to yourself, so there's 7 prefixes here, and there's 2 different sets of lengths. 7 times 2 is 14. Did I do that right? Yep. So we have 14 separate. So if we're going to test everything about this function using when it handles discover, I would have to sit here and write out 14 different console log statements. And of course, that is going to be super tedious, and you never, like, super time consuming too. Fortunately, there's always a solution for that. So I'd like to introduce to you automated testing using Mocha and Chai. Now, oh, big words. What are those? Automated testing is simply a way to automate what we've just been doing kind of on console log statements, but have another program handle all of that for us and display it in a nice, neat format. So what you see here on the right is a test runner that I built. It is built with a library called Mocha. And it is essentially each line that you see here corresponds to one of those console log statements that we wrote back in the REPL. So it's testing one particular set of inputs and looking at an output to see if they match up. Over here on the right, in the detect network file, I have the full function detect network and all its beautiful functionality, where it handles multiple cards. And then in detect network.test, this file, I actually have the logic that is our actual tests. And this is written with a library called Mocha, which is our assertion library. So keep in mind, though, as we do this, that our workflow is still essentially the same as what it was over on the REPL. We are going to run some tests. We're going to see if our function passes. We're going to fix any errors, and we're going to get them all to pass and get that great feeling of getting all green check marks. All right. So what was the problem? Can anyone remember what was the problem with this first American Express test that we had to go and fix? Didn't we? And it looks like, actually, I'm looking at my code. Same problem. It's still a typo in the conditional. I still need to change this 34 here to a 37. So let's rerun our tests and see if it passes. Not quite. Hang on. Oops, did I make a mistake? That wasn't supposed to happen. Nope. That's correct. Oh, I actually need to save my file first. Right, thank you, Salma. And there we go. So good, we fixed our first test. So what's going on under the hood here? Let me switch over to my detect network file, my detect network.test file, and let's look at a little bit of code. This is how Mocha and Chai is set up. Mocha, when you see a describe function, describe basically sets up each block that you see here on the right. So describe is just a way to encapsulate what we call a test suite which is just a list of tests that all have a common theme. Each it function that you see here is the actual test. I give each the test a title that you see here on the right. And then I'm using what's called an assert function, which you might recognize. It's essentially still running my function and comparing it to the expected result. All right, that's the triple equals here in the middle. And we're doing it for 2 different prefixes and 2 different lengths. This, however, is not the only way you have to write these tests, because you might say, Andrew, sometimes there's things I don't just want to check the output, I also want to check certain things about my output. So you can also say check that your output is the correct type or is the correct length. I wrote a couple tests here. And you can also use a little bit different syntax here, just to say that you're checking an equals. All right. So I'm gonna stop there for a second. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry, I am clicking on the wrong things. Any questions so far? All right, no questions? Feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll definitely get back to them. So one of the things I love about Mocha and Chai and writing with it is that I'm not stuck with just writing this assert function and having to remember what that is. They actually took some time to let you write tests that follow a very natural syntax. So this, for example, the should syntax reads like this. Here's my call to my function. Should be a string. Basically, all this is doing is exactly what we've always been doing. Well, this is just checking that my output is a string. This down here, detect network should equal Visa. We'll check to make sure that my function equals Visa. You can also, if should just isn't really a word that you like, or you want to change it up a little bit, you can also write the exact same thing with the keyword expect. And again, here, this just reads very naturally, expect to be a string, expect detect network called with this number to equal Visa. So this is a lovely, so you can quickly write some unit tests for your functions. The real power comes in when things get a lot more complicated. So let's throw a little wrench in the works. I told you that there was a little extra, in this version of detect network, there's a little extra logic. Let's look at the logic needed for a lovely Chinese card called China Union Pay. I'm going to stop for a quick to answer Stefan's question. Best practices preference for should or expect. I'll be honest with you, I've been using these for about 3 or 4 weeks now. So I don't know of any best practices. As far as I can see, they do exactly the same thing. So for me, it's just more of a personal preference for what I remember. Cool. So given that, Chinese Union Pay, let's take a look at the requirements for this particular card. So this card takes all the prefixes 622.216 to 622.927. Then it also takes these prefixes 624 to 626. It also takes these prefixes 6282 to 6288. And it has like 4 different lengths that it can possibly be 16 to 19. I'll save you the math. That is about 1,000 different individual prefixes that Chinese Union Pay could be. And of course, multiplied by 3 different lengths, we're looking at 3,000. There's 3,000 different combinations of card numbers that Chinese Union, that our function needs to handle. Whew. So personally, I'm really glad we're not stuck on writing 3,000 console log functions, for sure. And this is where the real power of an automated test suite comes in. So let me switch back over to my detect network, and I will conveniently unveil a little bit more logic. First, I'm gonna, let me see, going on the way down. So this file that you're looking at is simply a regular JavaScript file. So you don't have to just write unit tests in it. You can also throw any other logic in it in order to loop your tests, in order to set up different variables. And so how do we test 3,000 odd different different card numbers? Well, we set up some loops. So I won't walk you through all of this, but basically this logic right here is making some arrays of all the possible prefixes that I would need. It's calling a helper function to help me do that. And then it is looping twice. It's looping once through all the prefixes, all the possible prefixes, and then looping again through all the different lengths. And then it's calling a helper function that I set up, which takes in a current prefix and a current length, spits me out a new card number here. And then we're literally, I wrote one test here, again, an it test, detect network for the given card number should equal China Union Pay. And let's see what happens. Oh, I will say, in case you're for those a little more familiar with JavaScript, this is also there's one technical thing to overcome. You do have to use an immediately declared. Thank you, IIFE. Thanks, boss baby. I'm blanking right now on what that means, but basically I'm declaring and running my function at the same time. You do have to use one of these to handle some scope issues that crop up, but I'd be happy to run anyone over what happens there afterward. But anyway, so grand finale. Yes, it handles grand finale. Let's see what happens when we run. So what's going on? And sometimes this pops up. What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? Uncaught syntax error, unexpected token. Line 197. Oh, I forgot to delete all my comments. Let's see what happens. All right, just running all my, and there we go. So my loops are successful. And it is literally testing in the matter of seconds all 3,000 odd different card numbers without me having to write that many statements. So that in a sync is why you want to use automated testing whenever possible. Even with all the different, there was a certain amount of debugging and learning and everything that came into writing these tests, but it pales in comparison to the amount of work you would have to do to actually physically test your function on to make sure it works. So that, in a nutshell, is unit tests, and I will be happy to give back the floor to Lawrence Lockhart.
Good job! Wow.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
I guess I should say, are there any questions or any particular comments on? Not that I may, with my 3 weeks of experience, may be able to answer all of them, but might spark a good discussion.
I have one.
Sure.
just having come from like JUnit, is there any way that you could have like those 3,000 tests return back a single all ranges passed or there were failures on your results page?
Yes. Yeah. You can.
You don't have to remember it now. I was just
Yeah.
wondering.
Yes. It has to do with like rearranging the order of your describe and your it, I believe. Yes,
Okay.
I'd have to go back and dig to see it, but that's definitely possible.